important fact you need to know. In any argument, the dummy always wins the argument. The dummy wins every argument due to one important fact that you need to know. The dummy comes in with facts. The dummy comes in with strong opinions, thoughts, and doesn't react off emotions. Comes with facts. Comes with studying the facts, making sure they cross their T's and dot their I's. Arguing the fact that hopefully push towards change. Trying to push to not only change your mind, but change your thought process to push you into a positive way of thinking. However, what the dummy doesn't understand is the person that they're arguing against and arguing with is not interested in facts. They're not interested in the fact that of your opinion. They're not interested in the thoughts and the research that you put into it. They're not interested in the history of the subject you're discussing. They're more interested in the fact that they have a certain feeling about it and that their emotions play a place in those feelings. And those feelings cannot be budged or moved. But we're going to talk about that more as we go through today's subject. So, without further ado, welcome to the Past to Present Podcast. I'm your host, Alan the Great. As always, the Past to Present Podcast is brought to you by those wonderful people at Henry's House Media Productions, who are the family and parent company of the Past to Present Podcast. I want to thank you for being here for this episode, where we talk about segregation and Jim Crow law. But see, I'm going to be the dummy here. I'm going to play the dummy role in this argument right here, and hopefully win the argument as we talk about segregation. And the fact of the matter is, most of you don't care about segregation. And what I mean about what you don't care about segregation, you don't care about the true genesis of segregation, the true history, the foundation of segregation and Jim Crow laws. Some of you say, yeah, speak about it, but what you really want me to speak to is your emotional feelings, your emotional thoughts, your emotional feelings onto modern time segregation, modern time racism and socialism and classism. All the isms that plays into your life right now. That's the reality of what people want to speak on. What you want me to speak on is what's going on with interracial relationships, how interracial relationships are making you feel and affecting your current life. What are they doing? Are they threatening your family? Or are they threatening the idea of you having a relationship? What about your children? How do you truly feel about interracial relationships? That's what you would like me to get into when we talk about segregation. But what we're not going to talk about is we're not going to talk about the history of segregation. We can't talk about that because, as usual, you're not interested in the history of segregation. So you're not interested in Booker T. Washington and his historical speech about segregation. You're not interested in the fact that he stood in front of an audience full of white, or should I say Caucasian people, who had the thought process before he spoke his speech about who is this nigger, and pardon my French, but who is this nigger who's standing in front of us and who has the audacity to think that he can speak to our audience. You're not interested in that. You're not interested in the origins of the speech, which I'm paraphrasing, of course. You're not interested in the fact that in his speech, once again, people, I'm paraphrasing, that he said and spoke that black people should not fight for equal rights, not fight for equal rights to vote, should not fight for the fact that they want to be on equal ground and treated equally as other white people. They should not fight for the fact that they want to own their lands. Instead, what they should do is they should become good citizens, work hard, and create wealth so that one day the white people can see that black people should be on equal ground. Of course, I paraphrase the speech, and you can look up Booker T's famous speech if you want to. We're not interested in here to talk about the fact that Booker T. Washington created the Tuskegee School for African Americans back during Jim Crow laws. We're not interested in hearing about Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois and the fact that he spoke against segregation, in fact went against Booker T. Washington's thoughts in the fight for segregation, to end segregation in the Jim Crow laws. We're not going to talk about Edra Wells, who was the first person to actually stand up and spark the movement for civil rights, the first woman to show her power and true strength of protesting and going to a court and fighting against a court that was stacked against her. Who was Edra Wells? Of course, you don't know. We all know Rosa Parks, though, right? Rosa Parks was, of course, the woman who decided to sit down on a bus and refuse to give up her seat to a white person. This sparked the civil rights movement, and she was, of course, the mother of the civil rights movement. We know about Rosa Parks, but what about Edra Wells? We don't know much about her, according to her, and plus it was in the 1800s. We don't have Google. We don't have ways to learn, but we're not interested in the facts. Only the dummy is interested in the facts, okay? So keep that in mind. Edra Wells, yes, she did refuse to get up out of a train car when a conductor came to her and asked her to get out of her seat after a Caucasian male came to sit down. Edra Wells argued the fact that she was in the proper seat, that she was in the proper area, that was based under the segregation law, and that she refused to move out of her seat. When the conductor then dragged Edra Wells out of her seat, she bit the conductor on his leg and then later on sued him in court winning a case which was monumental during the Jim Crow law against a white-owned company. She won the case, however, that case was overturned by a higher court system. But you're not interested in that, so we're not going to talk about that area or that chapter of the history of segregation, because that's not what you're interested in. What you're more interested in is talking about the current state that we're in right now. So let's talk about it, people. Let's talk about the current state of black people in segregation in our current situation that we have right now in front of us. So can we speak about the facts one moment? Can we speak the truth one moment as we go into today's subject? Can the church say amen to what I'm about to say to you right now, people? So let's talk about it, okay? Let's talk about money, because that's being something that drives all of us, no matter what our race is, no matter what our culture is, no matter where you stand. We all are driven by money. Hey, we all get up every day, go work for money, even though we pay less than our true value. Up, I just went all the way off subject. We're supposed to be talking about segregation, not talking about our jobs and what we do or don't do. So let's get right back on subject. Can we talk about money for a second as we talk about segregation right now? Let's talk about a different type of segregation. Let's talk about segregation of money. Now, can we all agree on one thing? Because we can't agree on much. Can we all agree that money is the color green? It's not black. It's not white. It's not broken up by different races or gender or social classes, okay? Can we all agree that money is green? We can all agree at that, right? That money is of one color. Of course, change is different colors, but we're talking about the money that folds, okay? Can we all agree about that? Can we all agree that money is all created equal? Can we all agree on that? All right, cool. We can all agree on that. So let's get on with it. Let's talk about the segregation of money for a second, because it's all the same color, so how do you segregate money? Well, when you talk about segregation of money, let's talk about how money circulates in certain communities. So according to research by multiple different research bureaus, the money circulates as such. In the Asian community, the dollar spends and circulates in that community for 30 days. So in the Asian community, a dollar circulates in the Asian community for 30 days. In the Jewish community, that same dollar circulates in the Jewish community, I believe, for 21 days, 20 to 21 days, okay? In the Caucasian or white community, how long do you think the dollar circulates? A total of 17 days. Now that only leaves us one race left that we want to talk about. Can anyone out there right now guess how long does a dollar circulate in the black community? Come on, give me a chance. All right, no one got it? All right, how about this? 6 hours. So in the black community, a dollar circulates for 6 hours in the black community. Now you might ask why. Why does it only circulate for 6 hours in the black community? Well, now we got to talk about the segregation of money. Do you understand also that black people pay up to $1.1 trillion into the economy every single year? However, only 2 cents on each dollar is actually injected back into the black community. Now, should we say, well, it's the government's fault? They should try to do more to help the black people and to inject more money into the black community? Or should we say that black people should start to open and run their own black-owned businesses? Maybe they should support their own community. Instead of spending their money in all other communities, maybe they should spend money in their own community. Let's talk about it. The dollar is segregated. So we're talking about segregation and how the dollar is segregated. So the reason for the black dollar only circulating in the black community can be broken down to under one situation and real simple solution. Where is the black-owned companies that's in black-owned communities? Now, I personally grew up in the projects, okay? The projects, Section 8, how you want to say it, which is predominantly ran and lived in by African Americans and mostly poor African Americans. Now, if you've ever been to an urban neighborhood, as they like to say, where it's mostly socially black people who are of poor origin and are not come from or not of money, then you understand one or two things. When you go to that community, you're going to see stores owned by people who are not of black descendants. They're owners of Asian and Middle Eastern descendants. And I'll give you a better example. So when you go to these stores, what do you see? You see a Chinese store on every store. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Chinese food, as many of us do. Okay? Love beef and broccoli. Chicken and broccoli. Now, I'm kind of staying away from the beef. You know, I'm trying to get away from red meat. My wife's trying to make me become vegetarian. That's a whole nother subject for a whole nother show and a whole nother day. She's trying to turn me into a vegan, you know, and I'm working on it, okay? God ain't finished with me yet. That's all I can say about that. But anyway, Chinese stores are frequent in black and urban neighborhoods. You'll find liquor stores who mostly are owned by either Asian or Middle Eastern descent. You'll find hair stores that black people frequently go, especially black women who love to buy hair weave. And that's not to say that white women or other races do not buy hair weave. I'm just stating the facts that a lot of black women spend a lot of time in their hair. So does men. We find barbershops, but however, barbershops are a small descendant or a small population in black communities. So here's the thing. When you think about how the money circulates and only stays in black communities 6 hours, you gotta ask yourself this question. How does it stay longer when there's not many black-owned businesses in the community? And not only when there are black-owned businesses in the community, they're not supported. I'll give you an even better example of us segregating our dollar. Segregation of money, segregation of businesses, and segregation is sometimes by our own race and by the individual races who are crying against segregation or crying for segregation. Here's an example, okay, people? I'm sorry if I'm losing you. Try to stay with me. I remember in my neighborhood there was a soul food joint, okay? I think the soul food joint name was Maz or something like that. I don't even remember the name of it. The point is, there's a soul food joint in the neighborhood, and the joint is a store, okay? For y'all that don't know, soul food joint is a store. On that same block, there was a Chinese store, a few stores down, okay? Soul food joint lasted 3 months. Lasted 3 months before going out of business. It was opened up several times, again, where people try to be advised this black-owned soul food store, it never can stay open longer than 3 months. That same Chinese store that lived on the same block was frequent by the residents who lived in that neighborhood and never went out of business in the whole entire time that I lived in that project area and visited the area. Now, you probably say, well, black people just wasn't feeling soul food. The soul food probably wasn't that good. So maybe that's why I didn't go to it. It didn't have nothing to do with it being a black-owned business. Well, you got a good point there. But see, the dummy always tries to speak facts and give a little bit of opinion, a little bit of insight on those thoughts. So there was another soul food joint that was made a few blocks away, and it was owned by an Asian company. It was called the Ho Ho Market. For the people who are familiar with North Wilmington, they sold soul food in there. Soul food. If you don't know what soul food is, fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, greens, sweet potatoes, cornbread, soul food, people. Food is made from the soul. Now, this is owned by a Chinese family. Now, this soul food place was popping. And you heard, what I mean by popping, a lot of people who loved this soul food place, was going to the soul food place, heard a lot of great conversations about how great this soul food is. But I'm like, but soul food is typically made by people, black people or African Americans. And you're telling me Asian people are making soul food, and in fact, they made soul food better than black people. So I said, all right, you know what? Maybe it's a possibility. It's a possibility that there may be a case of that. So I figured, you know what? Black people, we should start opening up a Chinese store and see how many people frequently come to the Chinese store to see how much we can outsell them. We can probably outsell the Chinese people, right? Because, you know, black people probably can make better Chinese food. I make beef and broccoli. I make chicken and broccoli. All right, so it doesn't taste as good as the Chinese store does, you know. And, you know, when it comes down to chicken broccoli, I probably prefer to go to Chinese store, prefer over mine. I'm an excellent cook, but, you know, it just doesn't taste the same. And I thought about the same thing with soul food. It just doesn't taste the same. It doesn't have the same feeling because you don't know the same ingredients. You don't know the thought and the heart that goes behind it because there's a reason they call it soul food. But here's the problem. So when you have the Maz soul food joint who can't last in the neighborhood for 3 months, you got to wonder, how does the black dollar circulate for more than 6 hours? The black dollar is being segregated. Just like many other dollars being segregated. And why am I continuing to say the dollar is being segregated? Well, let me further explain. When you go to Chinatown, what do you see? You see mostly Chinese-owned businesses, Chinese-owned stores that's through Chinatown. That's why they call it Chinatown. You ever went to Little Italy? Where do you go to when you go to Little Italy? You go to stores that are owned by Italian families. That's right. So it's common that this dollar can circulate in their community more when the people who own these restaurants in these neighborhoods often buy their products, whether it's things they sell in their stores or things they make in their stores, from other Chinese people or other Chinese communities. So therefore, the dollar circulates more, and they keep their dollar segregated in their families and in their race group. Now, I'm not sitting here making a case for segregation because I believe separation is the only thing that divides us as people, and dividing us makes us weaker, not equal. I'm all for coming together. I'm all for us looking past the fact that we are different colors, different descent, different race, and even different gender, and learn to respect the people as they are. Learn to love people because they're a good person, not because they're black or they're white, but because they're just a good person, and you enjoy their company. I'll give you an example, okay? I'll give you an example when we talk about segregation and why I'm such an opponent against segregation. I used to eat lunch with a Caucasian woman who's about 60 years old, maybe a little bit younger, but she's twice the age I am. Old enough to be my mother, okay? Eat lunch with her for 10 years straight, every single day. Man, this woman goes to dinner every month. Every month, me and 3 other white women go to dinner, okay? Looks weird going to a restaurant, right? It's really weird. A black man going to dinner with three older women who are all retired. Looks weird. Have great conversations. We disagree. We disagree sometimes, but we do it respectfully. We have a love for each other, and we have conversations. These women taught me things. I've taught them things. Not just things about being black or being white, but things about life in general. We teach each other things. We learn from each other. But most importantly, we respect and love each other. So it's a possibility that this can happen, that we can learn to love and like each other, that we can appreciate and respect each other. But the problem is we get so hooked up and caught up in the ideas of social media and all the media attention you get on TV. We get so hooked up in our family and other older generations who preach the fact of that why segregation is so important, why you need to be segregated from other races, why you cannot trust other races. When the reality is, in the words of the great Tupac, they say it's a black man, it's a white man I should fear, but it's my own kind doing all the killing here. The reality is, sometimes it's not a color of race and a person we should mistrust. What should mistrust is the person who's trying to hurt us, regardless of their color, their skin color, regardless of their gender. Maybe that's what we truly need to focus on. When we talk about segregation, maybe we need to segregate ourselves from people who are not like-minded like us. So for you out there who want to be business owners, maybe you need to be segregated from the people who don't have the mindset of who wants to have a job, and that's their mindset. Segregated from people who don't believe in positivity, but only believe in negativity. When we talk about segregation, yeah, we do need segregation. We need to segregate ourselves from people who look to hold us down and start to get around and connect ourselves with people who are willing to lift us up. You understand? Instead of being segregated against men and women and people who are gay or bisexual or whoever want to be in interracial relationships, why don't you start to segregate yourself away from a person who has that type of mindset? Because that's the type of mindset that breeds ignorance. It breeds ignorance. It breeds ignorance and separation, in which you realize and what life and history has taught us one thing, that separation equals to our demise and has always equaled to our demise. Nothing good came out of segregation, nor has nothing good came out of separation. So maybe we need to end separation, or maybe not. We need to uplift and encourage segregation, but segregation for the right reasons. For the right reasons. Maybe we need to uplift the people who want to create black-owned businesses, not because they're trying to be better than anybody else, not because we're being racist when we want to create our own black business, but because we're trying to create empowerment in the communities that we live in. Maybe we need to create black business and support black businesses, not because we're trying to look at it as a racist term, but because we're trying to uplift our community and our children. So we're trying to get on the same playing field as these other races whose dollar circulates in their communities a lot longer. Maybe we need to have a segregated mind once again. Get away from these people who just want to have a job. Get away from these people who want to push the agenda of racism and hate. And get on board with the people who want to push this country moving forward. Get away from the people who wearing MAGA hats or have that MAGA mindset to say, let's make America great again. And let's say, get closer to them people that say, let's make America great finally. Let's change the thought process. Let's change the agenda. Let's change the thought on segregation, because maybe segregation is truly needed. Maybe Booker T. Washington was on something when he gave that speech, but he just spoke wrong. Maybe what he really meant to say was, we need to get away from people who have a negative mindset and segregate ourselves and get around people who have a positive mindset, people who are not going to look at you and say race, people who are not going to try to suppress your vote, suppress your idea of you owning land, suppress the idea of you being great. Maybe we need to get closer to segregate ourselves, get on an island with the people who promotes love and happiness and peace. Maybe that's what they mean by segregation. And maybe that's what people mean when they bring the conversation of segregation to me. But you got to understand something. In any argument, the dummy always wins, right? So maybe you need to be the dummy in this situation, in this equation. Be the dummy in this argument. And to clarify what I mean by being a dummy means being a person who's going to look at a situation, and even though everything and all the facts and opinions tell you that this is not a possibility, that you're willing to still believe that what you're trying to achieve is in the makings and is in your reach. That's what I mean by being a dummy. So be the dummy. Be the dummy for change. Be the dummy to create segregation, a new idea of segregation, a segregation that brings people together rather than separating people. Be the dummy who's really ready to push the change and ignore those smart-minded people to tell you the things you want to accomplish are impossible. I want to thank you for joining me for another episode of the Past to Present podcast. As always, please hit the like button, subscribe button, comment below, and hit me up on Facebook, Past Present. Use the hashtag Alan the Great, hashtag Past to Present podcast, hashtag segregation, hashtag pushing forward, hashtag Jim Crow law, and whatever other hashtag you can come up with. Also hit me up on Instagram, Alan the Great as well. Please let me know what you think on this show, and remember, be the dummy. Push the change. And until next time you see me, I got one last thing to say, y'all. Stay tuned. Peace.